I wasn't just put into a box and in a role. I did all of these different things, and it doesn't need to be done at a perfect level. It's grassroots. We're in development, right? So I think the self-confidence, I think the idea that at the end of the day, being a part of something is why we're in sport, right? Feeling that you're a part of it and that you're impacting it. So like, how do you really fall in love with something, right? If you go to practice, which you don't really know, like you're learning about the game, and then you go try to apply it, and you don't get a touch, and nobody shares the ball with you, and how do you fall in love with it that way? I think at the end of the day, when you're playing 3-on-3, you get to fall in love with it. You get to be a part of it, and then the confidence comes from it. The teamwork aspect comes from it, and obviously, competition.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the 3-on-3 Hoops Pod, where we talk all things 3-on-3 basketball and uncover all the benefits of playing in a local 3-on-3 basketball league. My name is Kevin Roberts, and on the show today, we have a special guest, Coach Nick LoGalbo. Coach LoGalbo is a 3-time FIBA World Cup gold medalist for USA Basketball as a 3x3 men's and women's U18 head coach. He has also coached the USA Basketball Junior National Team. At the time of this recording, he is entering his 17th year as head coach at Lane Tech Prep High School in Chicago, Illinois. This is an excellent interview, guys, and Coach shared a ton of insight, and this is definitely an interview you want to listen to all the way through. In fact, this interview was so good, I decided to break this up into 2 parts. So you are getting part 1 of this episode. And I know if you're listening, you're going to get a lot out of it. And I know that you're going to enjoy it. But before we get to the interview, I just want to remind you guys that if you're in the Tampa Bay area, and whether you're a parent looking for a 3-on-3 basketball league for your child, or maybe you're a young hooper in high school or middle school looking for a 3-on-3 basketball league for yourself, I encourage you to check out our program, 3-on-3 Live. We have full 4-week leagues throughout the year. We have a couple of tournaments that are coming up. We're currently running our summertime Sunday 3x3 training. So if you don't want to be left out of the loop and stay updated on our next event, a league, tournament, open practice, we're soon going to be announcing our after school program, which is something I'm very excited about. If you want to stay updated on all of that, if you're living in the Tampa Bay area, head over to 3on3live.com and sign up for our mailing list. You can also follow us on social media at 3on3live, IG, Facebook, TikTok. Also, if you're in the Phoenix, Arizona area looking for a 3-on-3 basketball league, my regular co-host, Coach Jay, runs his 3-on-3 basketball program out there called Score Hoops 3-on-3 basketball. You can go to scorehoops3on3.com for more information and give his Instagram page a follow at scorehoops3on3. He had an exciting partnership with Under Armour and the WNBA, which we'll be talking to him about when he returns to the show. But that was really exciting. And lastly, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the show on your favorite podcast listening platform, don't forget to give us a follow. Go ahead and throw a good rating in there. And if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and this will help us continue to do what we're trying to do, which is promote 3-on-3 basketball and all its benefits. Also, we just love to keep sharing our love and passion about the game of basketball. So we would really appreciate if you could do any of that or all of that for us. It would definitely mean a lot. Okay, and now I am proud to present part 1 of my interview with Coach Nick LoGalbo. All right, thank you guys for joining us. I have a special treat, a special guest for the 3-on-3 Hoops Pod. We would like to introduce Coach Nick LoGalbo. He is the most famous coach that we're going to have on right now. So he is, when it comes to preparing USA basketball men's and women's 3x3 U18 national teams, Nick LoGalbo has done an exceptional job. And because of this, he's been recognized as the USA Basketball's 3x3 Coach of the Year in 2022, three-time World Cup gold medals for USA Basketball 3-on-3 men and women's U18 head coach, USA Basketball 5-on-5 junior national team coach, court coach, head basketball coach at Lane Tech Prep High School in Chicago, Illinois, founder of Chicago Globe Basketball School, one of the top ranked defenses, but a highly competitive Chicago League Conference. The list goes on and on. He's currently at Lane Tech Preps High School in Chicago, Illinois, going on his 20th year. He's 17 years as a head coach. I feel like Shannon Sharp right now, giving you all these accolades. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you on.
No, thank you for having me. Don't use that word fan. There's nothing famous about any of that. Just really honored and really blessed and lucky to get to be around the game. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Coach. So let's just get right into the interview. I want to, if you can tell us about some of your early experiences with basketball. Every coach, I feel like, has kind of a love story to tell about how they fell in love with basketball. So how did you fall in love with basketball?
I love that you use those words too. I really do feel that that's kind of what it ends up becoming, right? For people that are lifers in the game, it is a love story. This game has changed my life, right? It's made me the man I am. It's helped me become the husband and the father that I am. All the tools that I've learned through the game, self discipline and just work ethic, and I mean the list goes on and on. But it's a love story. When I was little, I grew up inner city Chicago in the late '80s, early '90s, so it was very hard not to, you know, have Michael Jordan as kind of your North Star. I grew up just hooping, you know, as much. I had a hoop in the yard. I played every day, and that was fostered by an older cousin. He was about 6, 7 years older than me, and he was pretty good. And he never, ever, ever let me win, and never, ever, ever took it easy on me. And it became when I got a little bit older, right? When I got to like 8, 9, 10, and he actually started playing one on one with me. And I mean, years of my life not winning a game against him, but then wanted to take that out on other guys that I played against, right, in grammar school. And it was really a love story. And I went to the same grade school in inner city Chicago, St. Helens on Western and Augusta. Shout out to anyone listening who knows who that is. But Coach K went to the same grade school as I did. So I think from a very early age, specifically, I think to that '92 Dream Team, I remember waking up in the middle of the night to watch those games, and obviously seeing my hero, Michael Jordan, lead the world to a gold medal. And then Coach K was on that staff, and Duke had just won their second national championship. And I think at that point, I remember being about 10 or 11, and then getting back into the hallways of my grammar school and being like, you know, one of the greats to ever coach this game was in the same space that I was in every day, functioning just as a normal kid like I was. And I think the dream kind of started a little bit there, you know,
Yeah.
And from there, just try to hoop as much as I could. Went to Lane Tech, played there, went to play some D3 ball, and then ended up right back at Lane and been coaching there ever since. So,
Oh, that's great. So you said you grew up in Chicago. Michael Jordan was my hero also, all the way in Florida. So
yeah,
I can only imagine how it was growing up in Chicago. How did growing up in Chicago shape your perspective on basketball, particularly 3x3 or 3-on-3?
yeah. I mean, I think you know, I'm very biased. I think Chicago's the best place in the whole wide world. I know a lot of people sometimes when they're outside looking in, it's like, well, you've never lived anywhere else. Like, I think there's a lot of people that have that mentality, like, go out and see the world. I feel like just the toughness and the grittiness of being an inner city kid in inner city Chicago, it's shaped me tremendously. And I love having that part of my DNA,
Yeah.
and coaching in the inner city. I'm at a really high academic school, but we're coaching inner city against inner city talent. Through my time at Lane, we've seen guys, thankfully we never had to play Derrick Rose when he was there at Simeon, right? But like that's the caliber of players, I
Yeah.
mean, John Shires at Glenbrook North, that's a suburb of Chicago, but Derrick Rose, I played against Will Bynum, who was in the league. Like, I think there's just a grittiness about being an inner city Chicago kid and playing in the public league, that's very unique and rare. Anyway, with that being said, how it shaped the 3-on-3 perspective, like, if you were growing up in Chicago in the early 90s, there was a thing called the Shoot the Bull, and it was a 3-on-3 tournament down at Grant Park, and that's where the Bulls would have their championship rallies, right? And
Okay.
I just remember growing up and I was still too young to really participate at that point. The age division started like 16 or something like that. So I had friends and my older cousins and everyone that played in it. But I just remember, like, man, growing up, like hooping in my yard. Whenever friends came over, we were playing pickup threes in my backyard. And I got to go to the outdoor courts right across, down the block and just playing threes as much as I could. Like, that's how it wasn't. I mean, right now there's so much organization with AAU and
Yeah.
every kid is playing travel year round. But when, my time, it wasn't like that. Like, if you wanted to hoop, you're going out and you were playing and you had to win to stay on the court, and it was competitive, and it wasn't, you didn't always have enough to play fives. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, playing threes was where it was at for most of my childhood and teenage years. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think you and I are around the same age. We at least grew up in the same era of basketball, and that was my favorite memories as a kid. Was going to the park, and we would play 3-on-3, waiting to have enough guys until we had enough guys to play 5-on-5. And I
exactly.
was kind of always disappointed when we had enough to run 5-on-5, because I felt more like I played 5-on-5 also, but I was kind of I was the shortest guy on the court, so not the strongest ball handler. So I didn't get the ball a lot, but I always kind of stood there in the corner waiting for my shot.
Right.
3-on-3, I'm always involved. So
Yep.
I always felt like, I had more opportunity, and I just had more fun. We had Hoop It Up over
Yep.
here. That was a big thing. So,
Yep.
and, I think recently we've seen a resurgence of 3-on-3 basketball, and you've certainly been a part of the evolution of 3x3 basketball, which we can explain, like, kind of the differences between 3x3 and traditional 3-on-3, if you want to get into that. But with you being part of the evolution of 3x3 basketball, can you share your insights on how the game has grown both in the U.S. and internationally?
Yeah. Yeah. And transparently, I really had no idea before I got involved. Like, the quick backstory for me, like, before I really got involved with USA, and I've said this before, and you mentioned you heard one of the podcasts I talked about the idea that
Mhm.
my cousin was shot in Chicago, and it was horrible, and it was tragedy. And I just remember trying, like, not to get into the whole deal, but like, I wanted to turn the negative to positive. I think inner city Chicago, it's the best place in the world. I love the city, but there are some fragmented parts of our city. There are some young kids who don't have the tools in their toolbox, and I think basketball is an unbelievable teaching vessel. Right? We've talked
Yeah.
about that. So I started trying to put on just 3-on-3 and youth clinics, like 3-on-3 tournaments and youth clinics in the parks, like outside, like not organized, not AAU, not going to get the top 100 players, but like, yo, let's get the kids in the morning. Let's do it like a youth clinic all morning and teach them the game, and then let's get like the middle school, high school age kids in, and get them playing some 3-on-3, some competitive 3-on-3. And
Nice.
that's really what opened the door for me to kind of even get my foot in the door with USA on that side of things, because they were looking around the same time the 3-on-3 game was growing internationally. There was rumblings that it was going to become an Olympic sport, and
Hmm.
USA was getting in to the FIBA world and playing 3-on-3 at that time. So they just had me come out and like help put on 3-on-3 events throughout the Midwest to help grow the game, to get people playing it. Because that's the thing that people understand. Like, you don't just get into the Olympics. Like, once it became an official sport, you have to be playing in the FIBA circuit, and these different tournaments have different color codings, and you have to win events and you have to accrue points to get yourself eligible for the Olympics. And so I think in a really cool small way, like, um, small part of that, just helping to throw these events together and get guys involved. And it was really cool. It was cool to see in our country what we were doing at that time. We were hosting these different regional events to get people qualified for the national championships. The national championships, the best in the country, were coming out to Colorado Springs at that time, the Olympic Training Center, and we were hosting national championships. And it was men's and women's, and it was also the under 18 teams as well. So I mean, I was in the gym on the men's and women's side. We had some of the best players in the world
Hmm.
playing 3-on-3 at that time. And on the women's side, like, sorry, I'm rambling, but like,
No, this
in
is
the 2020 Olympics, like, they had to host trials, and the women's side, it was Kelsey Plum, and it was Kaylu Samuelson. It's all these amazing, and Fisa Collier, and the amazing WNBA players we see now playing on the 5-on-5 team. They were
mhm.
playing on 3-on-3 team, right? And I got to be a part of those trials in that training camp. On the men's side, there wasn't the WNBA, NBA name recognition, but there's a lot of high level Division One players that were playing it and playing it consistently. And I think what we started seeing was when we're going out and playing in the world, the rest of the world, like there's not guys that are sharing 5-on-5 on 3-on-3. There are professionals
Hmm.
playing 3-on-3 year round, traveling city to city, country to country, and they're playing it. And a lot of these events are happening in Europe and in Asia, and these teams are sticking together, right? And then we're throwing these teams in these events. We had to build some kind of continuity. And that's what the evolution at the highest level has really been about, right? And I think on the women's side, like Haley Van Lith, I remember seeing her. She was just starting in high school, and she was coming out to these
Yeah.
national events. And Cameron Brink and Aaliyah Boston,
Mhm.
like they were all in those events in those gyms. And then on the men's side, now we have some star power name recognition. Got Jimmer Fredette playing, but the other guys, Kareem Maddox and Canyon
Kenyon
Barry,
Berry. Yep.
those guys are all Division One players, and Dylan Travis, those guys are all college players, and they play it. And now they've been together, and there's some cohesion. So
Mhm.
anyway, I'm rambling, but that's kind of been the evolution, and I've kind of gotten to see it, which has been really cool. So
Do you think that we'll ever get to a point where I know we can, I don't know, the US can develop these I mean I see, I do follow 3x3 a lot, so I see, Team Princeton and
sure.
Team Miami,
Yep.
follow them in the World Cup. And but do you ever think we'll get to a point where we're constantly, I mean, I guess with more tournaments popping up in the US and where we're playing year long, like they do with the international teams?
Yeah. I think we're getting closer and closer to
Yeah.
that. I mean, I think it's happening now, but like there's not obviously as many events and people willing to put on events in our country right now because it's still, even though it's growing and it's Olympic sport, it's still really, I mean, I wouldn't say it's in its infancy anymore, but it's, I mean, in terms, it's like a toddler. Like it's still
Yeah.
very, very new for our country. And I think
Yes.
there's still people like they're going to watch the Olympics in a few weeks and they're going to see our men's and women's teams competing. And they're going to see like how fun and how competitive and how great of a game it is. And I think inevitably it's just going to be a matter of time before we get to that place. Um, right now you got guys who are committing a lot of time because you the other misnomer is that you don't just like take the best 5-on-5 players and throw them into a
Correct.
3-on-3 setting and think that they're just going to have it figured out. It is a different game. There are different nuances. There are different things like certain strengths really benefit you in 3-on-3 that don't necessarily always translate with the 5-on-5 game. Obviously you're shooting we shoot from on the 3-point line 3-on-3, it's 2 points, right?
Hmm.
But that's a 2-to-1 ratio to get to 21. Whereas in 5-on-5, it's 3-to-2 ratio, right? The points per percentage are different. So you need to have guys, every guy, even your bigs, need to be able to shoot that thing consistently, right? That's probably another question, so I'm going to stop there. But
Oh no, go
to answer
ahead.
your question, yeah, I think it's coming. I think
Yeah.
it's definitely coming.
Well, what are so we there are obviously differences between a 3x3 and even traditional 3-on-3, but like what are some, I guess I'm gonna rephrase this question. What are your favorite differences between 3x3 and traditional 5-on-5 basketball?
I don't know if I want to call it a difference. I think what ends up being like if you play 3-on-3, you realize like with 5-on-5, you can hide your worst defenders at times, right? Like you can take a guy who's a pretty good scorer and you need him on the floor for this, that, or the other thing, and you can hide him. You can put him in the corner on the corner three guy. You can take him out of rotations. You can triple switch and like you can hide guys at times. Obviously, the really good teams at the highest levels are attacking those guys, right? They're getting him into action, so you can't hide them. But that's like the chess match that's happening at the highest levels right now, right? Obviously, if you have a team where you're built where you have guys that are two-way players, I think you saw it with the Celtics this year. You have so many players that are two-way guys that you don't need to hide.
Yeah.
You're doing something right. But that's very rarely the case, I think, even at the highest level. So with 3-on-3, like you cannot hide defensively. You know what I
Yep.
mean? If you can't guard, you're out on an island. You're going to be exploited, and people are going to continually attack you. And I love that. I think at the end of the day, if you're someone that hoops, you've got to care about both sides of the ball. Like
Yeah.
there are some pure scorers, and don't get me wrong, we've got caught watching some of the best scorers in the world. They'll go get buckets, but then they're hiding on defense. They're taking plays off. And as a
Yep.
basketball guy, I just love guys who want to guard and guys who want to get after. And I think that's one of my favorite things. Like, you have to guard in 3-on-3. You cannot hide. And the other thing that you said, especially for the grassroots side of it and growing the game of basketball, whether we're growing at 3-on-3, five, growing basketball in our country, like, you need to be touching the ball to be involved. I'm watching these youth leagues, and I'm watching, like, even like my daughter's in 5th grade, right? And watching these teams play 5-on-5, some of these players don't have the skill set to throw a full court pass yet, right? We're playing 5-on-5, and some of these girls who are really, and boys too, but like, they're really stronger, and puberty's hit, and they're pressing, and they have their best player guarding 90 feet, and they're just ripping them. Like, obviously, how do you attack that? You throw over the top and you hit the middle, but like, they're just not strong enough yet. So some of these players are never touching the ball. They've invested all this money. They're going to practices. They go play games, and there's no growth, right? Where in 3-on-3, you're getting a touch. You're learning how to attack seams. You're learning how to play to your strengths. I think those are my two favorite things about what 3-on-3 brings, especially for the grassroots level.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this in also, especially at the youth level, because I did battle a lot with a lot of kids who, they'll shoot a 3 and then they'll shoot an arrow to the crowd, or,
Right.
do some kind of, hand raise. And meanwhile, we're getting beat back on defense.
Right.
3x3 doesn't, you have to, the transition is so fast. The ball's always in play, and you don't have time to celebrate. You got to focus right back on defense. You got to find your man.
Yep.
And I love that. So
I love it too. And I mean, to that point, I'll say that this last thing, like, in our program, like, when I started doing the 3-on-3 stuff with USA and I started putting on these events, I was like, what are we doing? Like in the fall, like in Illinois, we can't coach our players in the off season. Like, I can't teach my players. We can't have a workout.
Okay.
We can do weight training. We do open gyms. So what I started doing for some of our open gyms, I was like, you know what? We do 6 a.m. open gyms before school, because our school's really big. Volleyball is in the gym after school in the fall. So I'm like, 6 a.m., we're getting there. And we would always just do traditional 5s and make it competitive. But we started throwing in, hey, today's a 3-on-3 tournament. Get into your teams of 3 or 4. We'll have 50 guys, 60 guys in the gym. We'll break them up into pools, and they compete. And we started seeing it quick. Like you just said, like, you make a 3 yourself, like, you can't celebrate. Like, and a 10-minute 3-on-3 game, man, is that conditioning, is that cardio. Like, you don't get to stop. And I think it's helped our program tremendously. Anyway, that's a sidebar, but
that's a great point. All right, so how does playing 3x3 basketball or 3-on-3 basketball help in developing individual skills, such as dribbling, shooting, passing?
Yeah, 100%. I think the number one thing we just already kind of hit on, like, I think, everybody, whether you play 5-on-5, 3-on-3, like, if you're a student of the game and you're trying to get better, you're going to go for individual workouts, and you're going to try to work on your skills on your own, or in the gym with a few guys, for sure, right? But it's like, how do you really see those skills translate? It's with application, right? Like, I've been an educator in inner city Chicago as well. I'm a basketball coach, but I'm a teacher. And you don't just show up one day and give students, a 100-question test, and you've done no practice, right? But additionally, at the end of the day, I think the practice needs a test, right? Like, if you practice a curriculum for 2 weeks and you've ascertained all these skills, now there needs to be some kind of, like, application of those skills to see if you've mastered the skill, not mastered, but if you've grown in the skill, if you're able to understand what you're actually learning. And what is that in basketball? You have practice, you have skill development, right? That's going to class every day, but then you have your tests, and your games are your tests, your competitions are your tests. In 5-on-5, it's a watered down test. It's not a great test for our youth. It just isn't. There are certain players that are going to dominate the ball the entire time in a 5-on-5 game, because, and I'm not throwing shade at any youth development coaches, we all have a little bit of ego in this. We want to win, right? But it comes as a sacrifice to skill development, and it comes as a sacrifice for what we really should be. We're in it for the kids and their development at the youth, at the grassroots level, more than anything. And when you're playing 5-on-5 with 4, 5, 6, 7, even up to 10, 11-year-olds, I think we're missing the mark sometimes. I think they're not getting the application of their skills. So it's like, well, I was in the gym working, but I'm not seeing the growth. Well, how can you? Right? You like you said, when you played 5-on-5, you wouldn't hit in the corner. You weren't the biggest, strongest guy, because you're not the biggest, strongest kid in fifth grade, should that mean that you don't get a chance to work on your
Right.
skills in a live setting? No, it should not mean that. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, there needs to be this application, right?
Yeah.
I think I've answered your question.
No, you
I'm
did.
repeated, but like,
But
it's got to happen, right?
yeah,
So anyway,
I think also, and to the same point, I mean, I think 3-on-3, the 3-on-3 format is also a great for coaches. I mean, it forces you to
yes,
coach also. So,
yes,
I mean, you're not gonna, sometimes, we're talking about how I used to stay in the corner or whatever. Coaches will have their hands off as long as the best player has the ball, and we're working our action on the other side of the court or whatever. So,
hmm,
but you're not really telling players how to move. I mean, you'll hear coaches every now and then scream move, move, but I think when you shorten the game with 3-on-3, and you can see all the players, you're gonna completely notice that guy standing still,
yes,
and you're going to be forced, hey, move. Like
yeah,
you're going to be forced to coach or be more engaged. The coaches are more engaged, just like the players are more engaged. So
yeah,
I think it works both ways.
I agree.
um Besides technical skills, what life skills do players develop through 3-on-3 basketball?
Well, I mean, I think we kind of just hit on it too. I think there's a self confidence and a reassurance when you're working on some. I keep going back to like the middle school leagues and that and the grassroots level, right?
Mhm.
I really believe you shouldn't be playing 5-on-5, competitively when you're 6 years old. Like I just think that's kind of like it's not a waste of time, but like what are you really doing besides you know like
Well,
I
after
played
this,
basketball. I did this. I did this. I scored this many points. Like it's
yeah,
cool, but a lot of parents don't know what they don't know. If you're putting your kids in any kind of competitive setting at that age, it should be about development paramount. That should be the number one thing. More in that level of basketball. And I think as you get maybe middle school, I would even push it to like, I mean, later middle school, like really competitive. Okay, yeah, we're playing competitive 5-on-5 for sure. But I think anyway, to your point, the life skills that come with it, right? I think there's a confidence that comes with, hey, I've worked on my game. Now I've gone and applied it to a setting. And it's like, hey, I spent a lot of time working on my jump shot. And now on 3-on-3, I was able to get my jump shot off of one dribble pull up, off of a catch and shoot. I wasn't just put into a box and in a role. I did
hmm
all of these different things. And it doesn't need to be done at a perfect level. It's grassroots. We're in development, right? So I think the self confidence, I think the idea that at the end of the day, you're being a part of something is why we're in sport, right? Feeling that you're
yes,
a part of it and that you're impacting it. So like, how do you really fall in love with something, right? If you go to practice, which you don't really know, like you're learning about the game, and then you go try to apply it, and you don't get a touch, and nobody shares the ball with you, and how do you fall in love with it that way? I
that's
think at
right.
the end of the day, when you're playing 3-on-3, you get to fall in love with it. You get to be a part of it, and then the confidence comes from it. The teamwork aspect comes from it, and obviously, competition, right? Like you learn
hmm
to compete because you can't take a play off. You have to guard. You have to make the next right play, and like you said, you have no time to hang your head on a mistake.
Yeah.
Game's going too quick. You know what I mean? So anyway,
No, I love that I love the like we talked about at the beginning, about the love story. And I think that just like in any other relationship, you know uh the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And so I
100%.
love the word you use, impact. You feel like you have more impact on a team, on an overall goal. So I think that's huge. Just other things I want to throw in there: leadership, communication. Those are things that that some players may not, with a bigger setting. If you're a person on a team of 12, you may, and especially if you're a quieter person, or not as, you have a dominant personalities kind of tend to rise up.
Yep.
I feel like with a smaller setting, you feel more encouraged to speak your voice or to make your voice heard. And I think that's huge. You learn how to communicate. You feel safer, I guess. And so just a
100%.
smaller setting, you don't like lean back as much as you do on five, with a 12-man team.
I agree 100%. And I'll even say I think that happens even at the highest of levels, and I hope when she hears this, she doesn't if she hears it. But I think about Michaela Williams right now. I mean, she's one of the best players in the world, in my
Yeah.
opinion. She's at
Yeah.
LSU. She's a rising sophomore.
Mhm.
She's a walking bucket. The first year I coached her, I mean, there was COVID. She was younger than the girls on the team. She played with Janiah Barker and Kiki Rice and Ayanna Patterson. That was our
Yeah.
team that won that first gold medal. Michaela was, I mean, it was COVID. We were kind of like
Yeah.
navigating it, but she was pretty quiet and reserved at the start, right? But when we all saw how she can hoop and she was a part of it, she came right in and she ended up being the MVP of that tournament as the youngest player in the event. And by the end of it, she hits the game winner in the gold medal game, and she's out there talking her stuff and not in a, just being confident and like,
Yeah.
wow, right? Like I don't know that in a 5-on-5 setting,
Yeah.
like you said, with all those players and all those voices, you get that opportunity at least as quickly as it happened, right?
Mhm.
So anyway,
That also just deals with the confidence you talked about. I mean, the confidence it's amazing how much, what confidence can bring out in a person. I mean,
100%.
so,
Yeah.
even doing this podcast, the more and more shows that I do, I get more confident. I can ask better questions.
Oh, yeah.
So
Love it, man. You're killing it. I love it.